The sea off the coast of Devon is a cold, flat grey. It is April 1944, and the water holds the memory of winter. It gnaws at the men wading through the surf, a damp chill that seeps through their wool trousers and into their bones. This is Slapton Sands, a stretch of English coastline evacuated and repurposed as a full-scale rehearsal stage for the invasion of Europe. Sergeant Elias Thorne, 1st Engineer Special Brigade, watches his men work. They are not infantry, they are builders and destroyers. Their job is to clear the tide line of Belgian gates and hedgehogs, massive steel obstacles designed to tear the bottom out of a landing craft. Thorne is 35, older than most of his squad. Before the war, he was a construction foreman in Ohio, a man who understood steel, stress, and the unforgiving laws of physics. Now, he watches his men struggle, their movements clumsy in the heavy surf, burdened by gear. The air smells of low tide, diesel fumes from a distant LCT landing craft tank, and the sharp metallic tang of fear. The routine is brutal. Wade, emplace the charge, tape the fuse, scramble for cover, and wait for the blast that rattles their teeth. Then they do it again. He taps his own helmet, the M1, a 285-pound bowl of manganese steel. It's a good helmet, the best in the world, but it's heavy, and the webbed chin strap, damp with salt spray, chafes his jaw. He observes one of his men, a private named Sadowski, stumble in a submerged rut. The man is thrown forward, and the weight of the helmet, combined with the current, nearly pulls him under. It's a small thing, a detail that feels off, a piece of equipment working against the man. Thorne files it away. Another problem for a long list. The exercise shifts from placement to live fire simulation. The men are huddled behind a shallow berm of shingle, the only cover on the featureless beach. They are practicing for the real thing, and that means real explosives. A charge, 20 pounds of composition C3, is detonated 50 yards down the beach to clear a wire entanglement. The sound is not a boom, it is a physical punch. A column of sand and water leaps into the sky, and a second later, the overpressure wave hits them like an invisible truck. Thorne is knocked flat, his ears screaming a high-pitched whine. He tastes grit and copper. He pushes himself up, checking his limbs. He's fine. He looks for his men. Harris, Sadowski. They're dazed, bleeding from the nose, but they're up. Then he sees Private Miller. Miller is 10 yards closer to the blast, lying perfectly still. Thorne scrambles over to him, his heart a cold knot in his stomach. There is no blood, no shrapnel wound. Miller's M1 helmet is perfectly intact, still firmly buckled. Thorne rolls the young private over. Miller's eyes are open, staring at the grey English sky. His neck is twisted at an impossible, horrific angle. Thorne's hand trembles as he reaches for the chin strap. The metal buckle is jammed with wet sand. He has to use his K-bar knife to pry it open. The helmet comes free, revealing no injury beneath. It had done its job. It had stopped everything. Thorne looks at the intact helmet, then at the dead soldier. The helmet hadn't saved him. It had killed him. It had caught the blast wave like a steel sail, and the unyielding strap had transferred the entire force to Miller's cervical spine. What Thorne didn't know was that this one, sickening observation, would change the war. The M1 helmet was an icon of American industrial might. Approved in 1941, it was the first U.S. helmet to use a two-piece system, an outer steel shell, the pot, and an inner liner with a fiber suspension system. Manufactured by the McCord Radiator and Manufacturing Company of Detroit, over 22 million units, would be produced by 1945. Its ballistic properties, tested at the Aberdeen Proving Ground, were revolutionary. The manganese steel shell, 1-2 milliliter thick, could reliably defeat a 45 caliber pistol round at point-blank range and offered excellent protection against shrapnel, the #1 killer on the modern battlefield. But the design had a flaw, one not apparent in ballistic testing. The flaw was the chin strap. The OD green webbed strap was sewn directly to fixed, rigid bales on the side of the steel pot and secured with a metal hook and buckle clasp. It was designed for one purpose: stability. To keep the 285-pound helmet on a soldier's head while running, jumping, or diving for cover. But the battlefields of 1944 were not the fields of 1918. The primary threat was no longer just a bullet or a shell fragment. It was high explosive. An after-action report from the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps, dated March 1944, noted a disturbing trend in training accidents. Field observations during live-fire maneuvers, particularly those involving heavy demolitions and artillery simulation, note a statistically significant spike in cervical spine injuries and severe concussions. These injuries often present with no corresponding shrapnel penetration. The problem was physics. The M1's flared brim design, so effective at deflecting rain and shrapnel from above, created a lip that readily caught the lateral blast wave from a mortar, an 18mm shell, or a beach-clearing charge. The helmet became a lever. The strap became a fulcrum. The neck became the breaking point. The statistics were cold. A 12% increase in non-combat head and neck trauma. But Sergeant Thorne sees the human cost. He sees it in the 1,000-yard stare of the men who saw Miller die. He sees it in the medics who now carry cervical collars in their kits. The men have a name for it: helmet snap. Morale is fragile. The men are told the helmet will save them, but they've seen it kill. They've seen the lucky ones, men who were just far enough away, collapse with debilitating concussions, their eyes unable to track, vomiting for hours. The men are now caught in an impossible bind, a choice between two sentences: follow regulations and buckle the strap, and you risk a blast wave snapping your neck. Leave the strap unbuckled, as many are starting to do, and the helmet is useless. A simple trip on the beach, a dive for cover, and it flies off, exposing your bare head to the rain of steel it was designed to stop. The dilemma is whispered in the Nissen huts at night. What do you do, Sarge? Buckled or unbuckled? Thorne has no good answer. The problem seems systemic, unfixable. The invasion is weeks away. The logistics chain is already strained to the breaking point, moving mountains of men and material. There is no time for a top-down redesign from the War Office. There is no factory in America that can retool and ship millions of new helmets in time. A memo from a medical officer attached to the 29th Infantry Division is bleak. The injuries, while tragic, must be accepted as an unavoidable consequence of modern, high-explosive warfare. The experts, the engineers, the doctors all agreed it couldn't be done. Elias Thorne was not an engineer, not by any official parchment. He was born in 1909 in Sandusky, Ohio, on the shores of Lake Erie. He grew up with the smell of machine oil and the sound of industry. He was a high-steel rigger and construction foreman, a man who built scaffolds, bridges, and factory floors. He was quiet, pragmatic, and deeply observant. He didn't trust complex solutions to simple problems. He trusted what he could hold in his hands. He understood leverage, sheer stress, and points of failure. His past had shaped him for this exact problem. He'd seen accidents on the high steel. He'd seen a safety line, meant to save a man, snag on a falling girder. The line was too strong. It didn't break. The man was saved from the fall, but the violent snap broke his back. That incident taught Thorne a lesson that no MIT engineer could. Sometimes the strongest thing is the wrong thing. Sometimes the most important part of a machine is the piece that's designed to break, the shear pin that sacrifices itself to save the whole. As a combat engineer, his job was to understand explosives. He knew what overpressure felt like. It wasn't a distant, abstract force. It was a physical weight he felt in his chest. He was responsible for the lives of 40 men. They were his crew, and he was watching them get hurt by their own safety gear. He wasn't an officer, he wasn't a scientist, but he was a foreman. And when a tool is wrong, a foreman doesn't write a memo. He fixes the tool. The Nissen hut is cold, the air thick with the smell of wet canvas and stale cigarettes. It's 0200 hours. Thorne can't sleep. The image of Miller is seared into his mind. By the dim light of a hooded flashlight, he's trying to repair a canvas map case for his platoon lieutenant. The leather strap is torn, but the fastener, a heavy-duty dot fastener or press stud, is intact. He fiddles with it. It holds the heavy case shut. He pulls it hard. Pop! It opens cleanly. He snaps it shut, tugs gently. It holds. He yanks. Pop! He stops. The flashlight beam moves from the map case to his M1 helmet, sitting on his footlocker. He looks at the helmet's unyielding metal buckle. He looks back at the simple two-part snap. What if the buckle wasn't a buckle? What if it was a snap? Something strong enough to hold the helmet on during a run or a fall, but designed to pop open under the sudden, violent, shearing force of a blast wave. He takes his K-bar knife and, in a move that could send him to the stockade, he begins sawing at the webbed strap of his own helmet. His bunkmate, Corporal Harris, stirs. "Sarge, what in God's name are you doing? That's destruction of government property." Thorne doesn't look up. "I'm fixing it." The next morning, he shows his crude prototype to his lieutenant, a young, green officer from Virginia. The lieutenant stares. "A snap fastener, Sergeant, like on my duffel bag?" He laughs, a short, nervous sound. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The first time a man trips, it'll pop open. He'll lose his helmet. He'll get his head blown off. Stick to the regulations, Thorne. That's an order." Thorne nods, his face impassive. "Yes, sir." He pockets the snap. The lieutenant had called it stupid. Thorne called it a shear pin. Thorne knows he can't do it alone. He needs parts, and he needs a tool. He goes to the motor pool, home of the 7th Naval Beach Battalion, the Seabees. He finds Master Sergeant Scrap Riley, a supply chief who operates a logistics empire built on barter, favors, and lost manifests. Riley is fabricating a new exhaust bracket for a 1.5-deuce truck, his hands black with grease. "Scrap," Thorne says, "I need something." "So does the Pope, Thorne. Get in line." "I need heavy-duty dot fasteners, the big ones, the kind you use on a Jeep's canvas top, and I need a hand-press rivet tool." Scrap. Riley stops his torch, lifting his goggles. He eyes Thorne. "What for? You starting a tailoring business?" Thorne leans in. "It's for the helmets. It's for the helmet snap." Riley's expression doesn't change, but his eyes go cold. He'd helped carry a man to the aid station just yesterday, a kid from the 29th. He jerks his head toward a dark corner of the tent. Crate under the tarp, box of 500. I never saw you. You never saw me. And you owe me a case of scotch. Now get out. That night, the Nissen hut becomes a secret factory. Thorne and Corporal Harris, now a believer, work by the light of a single fabric-shrouded flashlight. The work is hard. They use their knives to cut the factory buckles from a dozen helmets. The sound is a quiet snip, snip. Then, the punch of the awl through the thick web strap. Finally, the click-crunch of the hand press as it sets the two halves of the brass snap fastener. They work until their hands are raw, painting each new snap with matte green paint to kill the shine. It's a field modification. It's unauthorized. It's a court-martial offense. But by dawn, 12 men in Thorne's squad have a new kind of helmet. The test comes 3 days later. Another rehearsal, this one coordinating engineers, infantry and naval gunfire. The beach is a hellscape of smoke, noise and confusion. Thorne's test group, 12 men with modified helmets, moves up the beach. The lieutenant sees them. "Thorne, your squad! Those straps are unbuckled. I gave you an order." Thorne, running past, just taps the side of his helmet. "They're snapped, sir. Good and tight." Before the lieutenant can argue, a simulated artillery barrage, live demolition charges, is triggered by the range safety officer. A charge goes off too close to another squad, the one adjacent to Thorne's. A man is thrown like a rag doll. They see his helmet still strapped tight, wrench his head back. A medic screams. The lieutenant sees it. His face is white. At that moment, a second charge detonates near Thorne's position. The explosion is blinding. A wall of sand, water, and compressed air hits them. Thorne is thrown, stunned, his ears screaming. He's alive. He gasps for air, tasting the cordite. His head feels like it was hit by a mule. He reaches up. His helmet is gone. It's lying 5 feet away in the sand. He touches his neck. It's sore, screaming in protest. But it's intact. He can move it. He looks at Harris. Harris's helmet is gone too. He's grinning, blood streaming from his nose, but he's alive. "It worked, Sarge." Harris spits, coughing up sand. "It popped. It popped right off." The lieutenant stumbles over, his eyes wide with shock. He looks at Thorne. He looks at the helmet on the sand. He sees the simple, open snap. He looks back at the other squad, where the medics are now frantically working. He doesn't say a word. He just understands. If stories like this fascinate you, stay with us. The next chapter of wartime innovation might surprise you. The lieutenant's report moves up the chain of command with shocking speed. 2 days later, Sergeant Thorne is standing at rigid attention in the battalion commander's tent. The rain drums on the canvas roof. The CO, a full colonel, and the regimental safety officer, a major from the medical corps, stare at him. The modified helmet sits on the colonel's folding table. The colonel is livid. "Sergeant, I have a report that you are willfully destroying government property. 2 weeks before the largest amphibious assault in history, you decide to become a milliner? You're drilling holes in the M1 helmet. Do you have any idea what you've done?" The major steps in, his tone cold and academic. "Sergeant Thorne, the Quartermaster Corps spent years developing this helmet. Its ballistic integrity is proven. Your fix introduces an unvetted point of failure. A man climbs a rope ladder on the side of a transport. His helmet snags. The snap releases. He's bareheaded. A piece of shrapnel kills him. You've traded a known, manageable risk for an unknown, catastrophic one. This is reckless." Thorne is terrified, but he's standing on solid ground. "Sir, With respect, it's not reckless, it's a sheer pin. I'm not an engineer, sir. I'm a rigger. I know what happens when a force has nowhere to go. It breaks the machine. Right now, the machine is the man. The helmet's perfect at stopping bullets. It's not perfect at stopping blast. I'd rather my men lose a helmet than lose their lives. Just then, the young lieutenant steps into the tent. Sirs, I ordered the modification. It's a lie. I authorized Sergeant Thorne to test his hypothesis. I witnessed the test. I also witnessed a Class A cervical injury in 3rd Squad from the same blast. Sergeant Thorne's men. They just got their bells rung. Sir, it works. The colonel stares at the helmet. He picks it up. He tests the snap. Snap. Pop. He looks at Thorne, then at the lieutenant. He is silent for a full minute. How many can you make? Thorne blinks. Sir? How many? Of these fasteners can you get? How many helmets in this battalion can you modify before we ship out? The mud of Slapton Sands dissolves into the cold, churning green of the English Channel. It is 06:35 hours, June 6th, 1944, Easy Red Sector, Omaha Beach. Sergeant Elias Thorne stands in the pitching dark of an LCVP. The ramp crashes down. The world erupts. The sound is a solid wall. The dry, terrifying rip of MG-42s, the thwip-thwip-thwip of bullets striking the ramp, and the deafening, ground-shaking crump of 88mm artillery shells exploding in the surf. Thorne and his men plunge into the waist-deep water. Men are screaming. Men are vanishing. He is 20 yards from the beach when a German 88 shell lands 10 yards to his right. The world goes white and silent. A fist of pure pressure lifts him, tumbles him, and throws him under the bloody tide. He feels a violent, sharp pop at his chin, a brutal yank, and then nothing. He surfaces, choking, salt and blood in his mouth. His rifle is gone. His helmet is gone. His head feels like it's been cracked open, but he can move. He can think. His neck is intact. He grabs a floating helmet from a dead man, shoves it on his head and keeps moving. All around him is the cost of the old design. Men floating face down, untouched by bullets, their helmets still strapped tight. The limp, broken stillness of fatal blast trauma. But his squad. Harris makes it to the shingle. Sadowski makes it. They are battered, bleeding from the ears, severely concussed. But they are alive. An after-action report filed by the 1st Engineer Special Brigade, dated 20th June 1944, notes the discrepancy. A notable deviation in casualty types was observed. While the brigade suffered catastrophic losses, the incidence of fatal cervical and upper thoracic blast injuries was 80, 2% lower than in adjacent infantry battalions. The report footnotes the unauthorized field modification to the M1 helmet strap and recommends it for immediate study. Thorne gets no medal. He gets a curt nod from his CO on the beachhead 2 days later. Good work, Sergeant. The Thorne Snap, as his unit privately called it, never became official U.S. Army doctrine during World War II. The war was moving too fast. The logistics of modifying 22 million helmets were impossible, but the idea spread. Like a virus, it passed from soldier to soldier, unit to unit. Infantrymen in the Pacific, fighting on Iwo Jima and Okinawa, would hear the rumors. They began leaving their straps unbuckled, tucking them, or modifying them in their own ways. The floating helmet became a common sight. The lesson was learned in the field, long before it was accepted by command. The official change came later, quietly. The U.S. Navy and Marine Corps, poring over the D-Day and Pacific casualty reports, began their own studies. The problem of helmet snap was formally identified. This research led directly to the development of new suspension systems and eventually the quick-release press-release fastener in the 1950s, the PASGT helmet of the 1980s, the K-pot, and the modern ACH and ECH helmets with their complex four-point suspension systems are the direct descendants of Thorne's idea. They all incorporate quick-release buckles or breakaway features. The core principle that a helmet must be able to let go to save its wearer is now a fundamental tenet of safety engineering. Sergeant Elias Thorne was honorably discharged in November 1945. He went back to Sandusky, Ohio. He went back to his life, to his job as a construction foreman. He never filed a patent. He never wrote a letter to the War Department. He never sought recognition. His contribution is a single sentence in a dusty after-action report, a footnote to a cataclysm. He died in 1978, a quiet man who built bridges, his family unaware that his ridiculous idea had saved thousands of lives. The principle of the Thorne snap is now woven into the fabric of our modern world. It is the shear pin on a boat's outboard motor, designed to snap off if the propeller hits a rock, saving the entire engine. It is the electrical fuse in your home, sacrificing itself to prevent a fire. It is the crumple zone in your car, a part of the machine designed to fail in a precise, controlled way to absorb energy and protect the human inside. We call it designed failure, a sophisticated field of engineering. But in 1944, on a cold beach, it was just survival. True innovation rarely comes from the boardroom or the research lab. It comes from the edge. It comes from the user. It comes from the person whose life depends on the tool. It comes from a sergeant covered in mud and sand who has the courage to look at a piece of life-saving equipment and say, "This is wrong," and the audacity to fix it with nothing but a map case and a hand tool. He didn't have computer models or advanced polymers. He had a fundamental understanding of pressure and a refusal to accept the unavoidable. The steel obstacles that Thorne's men cleared are long gone, rusted into the silt of the Normandy coast, but the cliffs and the beaches remain, silent witnesses to the cost of that day. The M1 helmet is now a sacred relic, a symbol of a generation, but the idea it inspired, that sometimes to truly save a life you must be willing to let go, is built into every piece of protective gear that keeps our soldiers, our firefighters, and our astronauts safe today. Every great idea begins as an act of defiance against impossibility. What impossible ideas do you think could change the world?